Hello everyone, I am KVMS Lokesh from CSEB. Today I would like to explain about the servlets concept in Java programming language. Servlet is a program which is used to accept the request and give the responses to the client based on the appropriate request. Now let us have a look about what are the servlets. First, let us see how to deploy a servlet. There are some certain steps which we need to deploy a servlet. There are prepare the deployment directory structure of the web application as shown below. First, we have to go to our app, then web and file, then classes. Then we have to keep the required Java files and class files in the particular classes file, and we have to give the jar file to the web.inf which is inside the library file, and we have to modify the web.xml file whenever we need it. And then we have to develop the source code of above servlet program or web application. Place servlet program request URL within the URL pattern. Compile all the source files which are having. Configure all the 4 servlet programs in web.xml having 4 different URL patterns. So example of some web.xml file is given here. Here the servlet name is ABC, class is class name, and the servlet name is matched with the above servlet mapped, and the URL pattern is the URL. Now next, after that steps is over, we have to deploy the web application and start the server. Use pattern to invoke the servlet. Generally, to invoke the servlet, we use some built-in software such as Apache, Tomcat, etc. Now let us understand what is this request and response. The first, the client sends a request inside the client-side program such as a request message, and the HTTP server accepts the request and performs the operate for certain manipulations according to the request and sends the response message to the client. This is the life cycle of the request and response happens in the HTTP server. And this is the main architecture form of the client browser, and this is the servlet container. The client serves with the name or HTML output such as with a request, and this protocol is transferred to the server container. And inside the web application, the web.xml takes care of all the mappings, and then the class files contains the code with in form of the request. These all are evaluated inside the servlet container and sent as the response to the client message. Now let us have a look about the servlet lifecycle. Servlet lifecycle consists of a series of events that begins when the servlet container loads servlet and ends the container in a closed down servlet. Servlet container is the part of a web server or an application server that controls a servlet by managing its lifecycle. There are 3 phases of the lifecycle: servlet container loading servlet in the memory, servlet object services the request, and servlet container shuts down the servlet after the messages are completed. Such types, there are some methods to make this all possible. They are init, service, and destroy. And these are the lifecycle methods which are used for the implementation of the servlet. This is a general structure. There will be 3 browsers. It means they are nothing but the clients. They access the web server simultaneously. Then the web apps folder, we have the different classes located, and the service and destroy init, the lifecycle methods will be invoked, and this will take care of the different multiple requests generated by the browsers or clients, and the response is sent to appropriate ones. Now let us see one by one about the lifecycle methods. First, init method. It stands for the initialization. The servlet container running the servlet's unit method which initializes servlet once in servlet lifecycle after loading the servlet class and create a servlet object. This init method definition looks like public void init servlet config where config is the servlet config class object. All the lifecycle methods store the servlet exception. When initializing the servlet container passes an argument to the init method, a servlet config object, for loading the specific configuration. And this init method is usually used for initializing the parameters such as init param, init values, etc. Then next comes the service method. The requests which are sent by the user and the methods which should be made possible for the server are done with this service method. And then after the completions are method done, this destroy method will be used. This container running a servlet destroy method once in a lifetime to close the servlet. The destroy method definition looks like public void destroy, and it waits until all the threads by the service method are terminating after the execution. Now let us have a general look about this API structure. The servlet API mostly consists of 2 main packages which will be of the sub-packages of the JavaX package. JavaX has the extensible packages such as servlet, server.http. These are not part of the Java core packages. Instead, they are standard extension provided by the Tomcat server. Now let us explore the JavaX.servlet package. JavaX.servlet package has some important interfaces such as servlet, servlet config, servlet context, servlet request, servlet response. First, coming to the servlet, it declares lifecycle methods such as init, destroy, suppose, as we have discussed earlier. And the servlet config allows the servlets to get initialization parameters such as init parameter values, which will be provided dynamically in the web.xml file. And then the servlet context, it allows the servlets to communicate within the servlet container. Servlet request, it provides the client request information to a servlet, and it has the all access to the requests that are sent by the client.html. And the servlet response stages the servlet in sending a response to the client. It means the operations are performed based on the request, and the servlet response class holds the response which is generated by the servlet request, and this will be sent to finally as the client. And next, there are some important classes such as generic servlet, servlet input stream, servlet output stream, servlet exception, unavailable exception, servlet exception, etc. Now let us see about one by one. Generic servlet. It provides a basic implementation of servlet interface for protocol independent servlets. It provides an input stream for reading binary data from a client request. Provides an output stream for sending binary data to the client. Servlet exception defines general exception. It means if any difficulty is encountered while running the servlet program, this exception will be raised. And the unavailable exception means if the server cannot find the appropriate request or appropriate response can't be sent, the unavailable exception will be raised. Now let us have a look about the servlet interface. The servlet interface defines the basic structure of a servlet. In other words, it is the interface the container used to reference servlets. All servlets implement this interface either directly or indirectly by extending the generic servlet. These methods are invoked by the servlet container. Some methods which are in the servlet interface methods are void init. It means it is in the lifecycle method like init. It initializes the parameters which are required before the execution of the response. And then get servlet config. It loads the general configuration which is provided by the init method, and it will be returned as a type of the servlet config. Get servlet info. It returns a string object containing the information about the servlet such as author, creation, version, copyright, the date of modified, etc. Void service. As we have discussed earlier, this is the lifecycle method which provides the service. It means it gets or posts the content that is request or response to the client or from the server. Destroy. This is also the lifecycle method which is used to destroy the servlet after all the manipulations and performances are completed. Now let us move on to the servlet config interface. It is implemented by a server. It means the servlet config extends the servlet interface. This configuration information contains initialization parameters as we have discussed earlier. Let us have a look about some methods which are in the servlet config interface. Get init parameter, get servlet name, context servlet text, enumeration, get init parameter. Some basic description about this we have been given here. Let us have a look. The servlet context interface provides a means for servlet to communicate with its servlet container. The communication finding path information, accessing other servlets, running on the server, writing to the server log, etc. The servlet context is a container within the servlet config object which web server provides the servlet. Some interface methods are set attribute, get MIME type, get real path, get server info. Set attribute sets the attribute, get MIME type acquires the MIME type, get real path returns the real path of the servlet, and the get server info returns the name and version of the servlet container. Set attribute sets the attribute, log contains all the details that are performed, and then log string message probability also raises an error if any crash appears. And then servlet request interface. The servlet request interface defines an object that encapsulates information about single client request. It accepts only a single client request at an instance, and even if we want, it may create a session, and all the requests that are sent by the client are handled here. Some methods of the servlet request interface are get attribute name, get content length, get content type, servlet input stream, get input stream. The get attribute gets the attribute, get attribute name returns the value of that appropriate attribute, Content length means the content of the input stream or the buffer or the attribute length. Content type means how what the content has been set to its. It means like HTML or CSS or text or JSON, etc. Get input stream means it provides an input stream for reading or writing of the objects. Get parameter string, it means the parameters which were set by the attributes will be returned. And get parameter name means the appropriate name or the designated label which is given to the parameter is returned. Values means it is a string of values which are given by the parameters. Get protocol means what is service protocol, that is service protocol or request protocol, etc. Response interface, it is the response interface which deals with the response counterpart of the servlet request object. It means it is the response generated for the request which is sent by the client. These are the some methods. They are set content type, set content length, get output stream, get writer, character encoding, which are general for sending the response which makes it readable to the user. This generic servlet class consists of the general implementations which make the lifecycle methods very easy to implementation, such as init, log, throw, logs are made easier. So we can see that the servlet makes easy interaction between the client and server using the Java servlets. Java servlets is very important for interaction between the user and client. So I hope everyone understood this. Thank you for your attention.